shared on this computer. Okay. So hi, everyone. This is Davina. I am interviewing one of my old commanders. His name is Mr. Donnell Downey. So I'd like to introduce him, and then he's going to share his current title and position with us and a little bit about himself, because it's been a few years since we've worked together, but I wanted to interview him specifically because he has left a major impact on my life. He was somebody who first introduced me to mentorship. I didn't even know what a mentor was until I started working with him. And just the information he has, I think it's so valuable to share with the world. So the floor is yours. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you again, Davina, for the opportunity. So my name is Donnell, and I was born and raised Southern Illinois. Well, there's a lot. I left home at 18, went to the Army, active duty, spent 6 years there in 3 places, actually, Fort Stewart, Georgia, Fort Hood, Texas, and I closed out in White Sands, Missouri, New Mexico. I started school on active duty, completed my associate's degree, finished my bachelor's out in New Mexico, came back to Illinois, pursued my master's, first in environmental science management and secondly in public administration. I did a stint in the doctoral program. I commissioned in 2010, so I spent 10 years enlisted. And the commissioning opportunity brought a lot of new pathways my way, a lot of learning opportunities and a lot of assignments that one in which brought me to get connected with Davina. So, I mean, there's a lot to it, and I think some of the questions that Davina asks will flesh out more information. But married, 3 kids. Kids are my life, and I'm ready to go.
Okay. How long have you been married?
Since 2009.
Okay. So wow.
Yeah.
And then how old are your kids?
So my oldest is 12. She's getting ready to go into her teenage years. Second oldest is 10, and the baby boy is 8. He'll be 9 in September.
Wow. And what's your current position right now? You're still full-time. What's your current position?
Brigade S1, which is essentially human resources. So it's a huge departure from my previous assignment at the battalion level. But I got a good team. It's just a huge learning curve getting used to all the transactions and dealing with the different personalities.
Gotcha. And then do you have people working under you now, or do you have like a
Yes.
team? Okay.
Yeah, so this is my first time working directly with a chief warrant officer. So he's a CW3. I have an E8 master sergeant. You may know her. You may remember her name's Thelma Barrios. She used to be at the battalion. I have an E7, which works with me full time, but she's in the support operations section during the IDT periods or drill weekends. I have 2 E6s. So I have one who's a medical dental NCO, and the other who's the personnel services delivery NCO.
Wow.
So it's a nice little team.
So you have more higher enlisted now, whereas before you had like junior soldiers.
Well, no. So at the battalion, I was the executive officer for the medical battalion. I had a senior NCO, he's an E8, as my operations NCO. I had an E7 as the assistant ops, and E7 as my S1 NCO, and a captain, in addition to a E7 who was the senior supply NCO for the battalion.
Wow. And then how did you get your current position? You said you were enlisted for like 10 years and then you kind of just made your way up?
Yes. So with any other full-timer, you'll sit in position for about 2-3 years, and then it's time to look for another job, because that essentially for the officer corps, you start as a specialist, so to speak. So, your lieutenant years, you're developing your specialized skills, knowledge, and attributes for your branch. And then as you progress, you'll leave the direct leadership at the company level, and you'll go more for organizational leadership. So you're trying to work through other people. So for this, I did 3 years as the battalion executive officer, in addition to a shorter stint as the health services officer. And there was a transfer of the previous S1 down to the maneuver enhancement brigade. So I took over his position.
Did you pick these positions, or did they pick you for the positions, or did you pick them and they interviewed you, or how did that work?
Typically, you're supposed to interview, unless there's a lateral move. So for me, it was a lateral move from 04 to 04. But typically, you want to have a board so that you pick the best candidate for the position. They just
Gotcha.
didn't do that this time around.
Okay. This question's kind of transitioning a little. How has your upbringing, or like your past or childhood, how has that affected you and like the person that you've become today?
That's a really good question. So I think I had I think everything about me is non-traditional. And what I mean by that is in terms of my upbringing. So my mother worked the third shift or the second shift, whichever one it was, from 3 to 11 for the longest time. So my memories are of getting up in the morning, going to school, and then up until 11 o'clock at night or 11:30 when mom got off to pick us up, I would be over to my babysitter's house. So I was in a working class family, blue collar, for the area. But I grew up in more of a poverty type environment. So my babysitter was, she's in public housing, walked everywhere. So it was almost night and day. So I got two different experiences. So I got a good life kind of experience, where we didn't go without wanting, and then I had more of I don't know, a shock and all type experience, to where I saw life from a different lens, so to speak. How people treated people who didn't have money, or lived in those particular areas of our town, and how people, despite the low socioeconomic status, they were still nice people. So that bias, I think, of people who live in certain areas are more violence prone or whatnot. I got to see that wasn't necessarily true.
Wow.
So I think that for me, it kept me humble, and really appreciative of what I was able to, I guess, achieve or have as a possession, to take care of it, but also to just appreciate life regardless, because I understand what it is without, and also understand what it is with.
Oh, I love that.
So I think that was the big takeaway, and not to look at people as like, well, I can't be friends with you because you're coming from this side of town or whatnot. More looking into who the person is, their character, how they treat other people and such like that. So I think those are the biggest takeaways.
What's been some of your biggest obstacles or challenges you've had to face along your journey, or just throughout your life?
I think there's been a lot of challenges. So I didn't meet my father until I was in my 30s. So I didn't have that father figure. I had a man who lived in the house with us that my mother was married to, but he was more just present. So there was that aspect of being and understanding what a man is and what a man does that was not present. So getting over that, coming to grips with learning that on my own, more hands-on experience, and forming my own ideas of what a good man is supposed to be, how to carry myself, learn how to tie a tie and stuff like that, and shave. And, my sister taught me how to shave by watching somebody else. So more of a single mom household, where you see other families and they have both parents at home, and feeling kind of that emptiness, I guess you could say, is a good way to explain it. And my mother, so she was a high school graduate. My father, I don't think he graduated from high school. So it's not that they were unwise in life, because they were very wise in life, but preparing us for life as an adult, I don't think they were very very well suited to do that, except to give, good life, um, I don't know, these are good things to do. What I was able to glean most from my mom was what not to do.
Yep.
Yeah, so she hammered it into me. You don't want to work in a factory. You want to go to school, you want to get your education, and you want to go and work on a job that you can wear a tie. It's like, well, I don't want to wear a tie. It's like, you're choking yourself.
Right.
But no, that's the one thing I did get is that, what not to do. You don't want to be on the street. You don't want to do this, that.
The other.
Because life costs. Everything in life costs.
Mhm.
So trying to figure out, for one, how to go to school and how to fund it. That was a huge obstacle, and the military provided the opportunity, but I was always averse to going into the military. I didn't want to do it. But I found that everything I didn't want to do, a lot of things I didn't want to do, I wind up doing it anyway.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. One big obstacle that kind of lingers still. It's associated with a traumatic event experience as a child, that precluded me from being myself in a lot of situations. And what I mean by that is that I had this feeling of being watched all the time. So unless I was with someone who I thought was taking the attention away from me, I kind of had that feeling that, well, I have to watch how I talk and watch how I act and everything. So that really set in anxiety, a sense of shame in a lot of instances, and an inability to talk to people and have that eye contact for the longest time, up until I was an undergrad, and I had an opportunity to go to counseling in lieu of a final exam. And that's when I was able to talk to someone who I knew was third party, objective, wouldn't disregard me or I guess judge me for opening up. And I think it was 6 sessions. And towards the end of the session, it was an open mic night. And I wrote poetry. I wrote a lot of poetry, and it was I think my way of expressing myself. So I think the sessions were on Wednesdays or Thursdays, one of the two, and there was the open mic night. I just found out about it like 2 days prior, so I wrote this poem, and I got up on stage and I said everything that had happened, and how I still kind of continued on. I didn't stop living. And that was where life for me really changed dramatically.
Wow, I had no idea any of this. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, I guess I'm quiet. So I do talk, but a lot of times I'm just quiet. And some things, like I said, I share. It just depends on the venue, and if the timing is right. But I use those experiences in order to connect with other people.
That's great. So how do you describe, so everything that you've shared with us, how has that led you to how you are now and your leadership style and how you get people to follow you and listen to you?
Well, so I had all that time of not really appreciating my voice and thinking that I didn't have much to say, or if I'm speaking with someone and one of my friends said that you think that people don't see anything when they look at you. So I reversed that, and I think there's a song out there by Whitney Houston, one of her first songs, that launched her into superstardom, and it was what was it? Anyway, a part of the lyrics is that the greatest love of all is the love you have inside of you. It's the love that you have for yourself. So once you are able to figure that out, then you can love and appreciate other people. So people who love themselves and respect themselves are more inclined to do the same for other people, and people who are less able to feel that for themselves are more likely to disregard other people, denigrate them, look down on them and such. So in addition to my own experiences and self-acknowledgement, I've had good leaders who've offered bits of advice. For example, the only time to look down on somebody is when you're helping them back up. So I took my experience, I took the previous experiences of having good leaders, and I want to ensure that if I had the opportunity to be in a position of influence, that I use it. If somebody invites you to the table, you better have something to say. So I look at the person, and I think Dan Aykroyd said it best. He said, when you look at the floor, you see the floor. When I look at the floor, I see molecules. So I start looking beyond, the skin and seeing more of how we're alike as opposed to how we're different. And then I can empathize better.
Gosh, you're giving so many good nuggets here and there. You're just dropping them. One of my favorite things that I said when you were commander of our company, you got in front of the whole company and you're like, you just thanked all the junior enlisted, like these are privates and PFCs. And you were just like, thank you. Like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even have a job. And how can I better serve you? And how can I better make you guys leaders? And that still, like, I still see it. I still hear it. I've never had an officer say that to anyone. So that's like, I can't thank you enough. Like, that has really impacted me. So I just love that.
Well, thank you.
And then it kind of goes like with some of your core beliefs, you kind of hit on that. So I was going to ask, like, what are some of your core values and your core beliefs?
So some of my core values is, I was trained as a scientist. So I trust but verify, meaning that, I shouldn't necessarily have to believe in something. I should know it. And if I don't know it, then I can make assumptions until I figure out is this true or is it not? So I'm more of a factual person, but I'm also a dreamer. So I allow my dreams to motivate me and to give me more opportunities because I can visualize a lot more, and that stems from again, from my development, my upbringing, my babysitter. So since she was in poverty, she didn't have a lot of activities for us to engage in. So then I would read. Because that was the only thing to do, if it was cold outside or if it was, and my siblings went to sleep, I would read to her, and I would stumble over words to the extent that I started to memorize exactly how she would pronounce them, so that I would anticipate where I might experience an error, and in order to do that, I would visualize what I was reading, so I can see stories play out as I'm reading something. So I use the same thing in normal life. So if I want to see something positive, I'll try and envision that. And, some wise people say that, we're a lot more powerful than what we think we give ourselves credit for, or what we think we are. And a part of that is that you have to say to yourself certain things. And when I was coming out of my, period of how I say depression and whatnot, my mother shared with me, she said, when you get up in the morning, and this is more of the service-minded leadership, I think. When you get up in the morning, you say, today is a great day. Today is a beautiful day. Somebody's going to go out of their way to help me, but I'm going to go out of my way to help somebody. And so it's that you already have that kind of ingrained in you to know that you want to help people who need it. And because I remember what it was to need help. And sometimes that help that wasn't forthcoming, or it didn't come the way I thought it would come. But when I got it and I received it and I was able to acknowledge it, I knew that I wanted to give that back to other people. And so the experience of being a junior soldier, I know that that's where the work is completed. We can plan as senior NCOs and officers, but the ones who are actually doing the work are those people who are on the front line and actually doing it. Otherwise, the senior NCO and officer are going to do this. So I give them their props because they deserve it. And we can throw out the myth that, people join the military because they're so patriotic and everything, and that's not always the truth. Some people join because they need an education opportunity. They need the opportunity to get away from whatever environment they come up in. And so we shouldn't take advantage of that and give them a rough time, because it's not the Army, it's not the Navy, it's not the Marines that make the service difficult. It's the people, and thus the people can also make it a great experience. So that when it comes time for retention, for example, they want to stay in, because there are actually some good people out there who are appreciative of the contributions and sacrifices that they make to be present and wear the uniform.
Oh, I love that. What would you say your biggest accomplishment or achievement is, or something that you're the most proud of?
Never giving up.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I think that we don't win all the battles. Everyone fails, and I tell people I work with and some of my subordinates that I fail all the time. But like WD-40, that spray that you put on the squeaky hinges, nobody says anything about WD-1 through 39. So you don't hear about the failures. You only hear about the successful product. So everyone fails because failure is our greatest teacher. So I think that one of my successes, or my greatest success, is just never giving up on myself. And in so doing, then you don't give up on other people.
Oh, so good. What motivates you or inspires you? Or when you do get to where you think you're going to quit, what keeps you going?
You don't want to work in a factory. I don't know, really. I want to be successful. Sometimes that takes different shapes and forms. I just know I can do a good job as long as I give myself the appropriate time to devote to it and attention. And it may not be the best, but it's the best I could do. And that's really all I'm concerned about is what's the best I can do. And then somebody else can come along and do it a lot better. And kudos to them, and congratulations for doing so. Because you have that skill or whatever, and I'm not necessarily competing against you in that endeavor, because there are things that other people can do a lot better than I can, and there's things that I can do better than other people. But that's, that's just appreciating yourself. So we don't do a good job of that.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
So good. I'm so glad I'm recording this. So what brings you joy, or brings like many meaning to your life? What are you passionate about, or what you love doing, or what fills your own cup?
I think that joy and happiness are a decision. So every day you get up, you can decide to be happy, because we didn't ask to be here, and unless someone who's unfortunate takes their life, we don't know when we're going to leave. So in the interim, you need to enjoy the life that you have. I mean, because if you compare even just our lives to others, for example, the people in Ukraine who are getting people are getting killed, executed, or in places where they don't have enough food and there's famine or whatever the case be, we have it good if you use the proper relation to our life compared to others. And I'm not saying that to gloat or anything. It's just a decision. So if, for example, I walk out the house today and I get ran over and I'm laying there, I don't want to think that I spent all day sad, or I missed out on enjoying myself because of whatever the case may be. So I make a decision every day that today's a great day. It's a beautiful day, regardless if it's raining, snowing, or whatever. So that's my most deepest motivation. What brings me joy are my children. They're my heart. I mean, I love talking to them. Someone said, give your kids more of what you had. So I didn't have a lot of time with my mom, but whatever time I did have with her, and if she involved herself in some kind of activity that I wanted to do. I remember one time she rode a bike around the block with us. One time. So now if my kids ask to go outside on the bike, unless I'm just not feeling good, let's go. We can ride wherever you want to. So you want to go outside and catch some worms, we can go and do that too. Yeah, so whatever they want to do, I try to include myself in some kind of way, even if it's just watching them play a video game, or my youngest daughter, she loves to build doll houses out of cardboard boxes, and she mimics stuff on YouTube. So I try to involve myself in that way, and that gives me the greatest satisfaction.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
I think I'll close with, I can leave home and know that when I get to work, I'm at a different home. So I look at the people I work with as family. I try to treat them as such, and I enjoy their company. I enjoy talking to them. There's some people that you always have an issue with, or just not, you don't have the opportunity to get close to them. But yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I never looked at my job as being a job. I looked at it as a way of life.
Wow, I love that. If you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I would tell him, um, it's okay to be you. Out of all the people who've ever lived, there's never been anybody quite like you. And the same with anybody else on this planet. There's nobody else who's ever come around and looked exactly like them, acted like them. So there's something, of course, unique about that. And I'll tell him, it's okay to love yourself.
Mm.
And you better love yourself, because you're the only one responsible for loving yourself. And lastly, no one's required to respect you except for you. You respect
Mm.
yourself, and I think if you do that, then you won't engage in activities that are detrimental to your health. For example, living a risky lifestyle, or substance abuse, or anything of that nature. If you can respect yourself and love yourself, um, you'll do right by yourself.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of leads me into my next one. What's helped make you successful, or what makes you different from some of your peers?
I read. I can't stress that enough. A lot of people just don't read, and sometimes a lot. We take our knowledge of the world and the things that we learn, and add to it in the literature. And again, coming from more of a science background, that's we do experiments, we gain knowledge, we put it in writing. People put their lives in books. Um, you can find adventure in books, but a lot of the answers, especially in the military, are written in the book somewhere. The hard part is
Mm.
figuring out where it is. So I think that what sets me apart from a lot of people is that I read, and I thoroughly enjoy reading, and
Mm.
and so I remember a lot of what I read too. So if other people won't read, then they don't have that same understanding, and
Mhm.
they're just using their own intuition, which it doesn't work in our society, or in a
Yeah.
lot of places of employment. Because there's rules, regulations, there's processes, and even if you build a process, you need to write it down so that whoever comes behind you, they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right. Do you have a hero?
I do not.
No. Okay.
I don't.
Tell
I
me who's the most influential person in your life and how they've impacted you, or maybe a mentor you ever had, or somebody who's impacted you.
um well, number one, I would say my my mother impacted me the most. If there was a role model, she was my first one. Um, so I learned, again, not only how to be, but also how not to be. You know, Women have played a large role in my life,
Mm.
mainly because that's who I was raised by. And so I'd say definitely my mother. But then there are also some inspirational leaders out there, and the one who comes readily to mind was one of my commanders out in New Mexico, and my squad leader. So I went to a primary leadership development course, which was the educational requirement for pinning E5 sergeant. And when I got to the school, they did a layout, so they inspected all of our equipment and our uniforms. And one of my uniforms didn't make the cut, so it was rejected. And the small group leader said if I didn't get a uniform by like 9 o'clock, I was going to get kicked out of course. So I said, well, you know what, just send me home. And my squad leader said, absolutely not. I'm going to go and get you a uniform. She went off somewhere and bought a uniform from like a one of those military
Oh,
surplus stores.
yeah.
and brought it back. She said, "You're gonna stay in this course." I said, "Okay." And while I was down there, um, your leadership could come and eat lunch with you. So one day, out of the blue, my squad leader, my commander came down and ate lunch with me. And so, when you say you remember that particular event, standing in front of the soldiers, I think a lot of it comes from that. When people don't have to do something, they do it anyway, and they do it because they're doing it for you, and they're going out of their way to do it. That's huge. And that meant a lot to me. And it showed me that just because, she was an officer, she could still show humanity and say, I'm coming down here to support you. So out of a lot of bad leaders, she stood up and separated the stuff from the pack, and I want to embody that if I ever had the opportunity to do so, to go out of my way to say, you're just as deserving of attention and concern as I am. So,
so good. What does your morning routine look like? Do you have a morning routine?
No, not really. I don't like working out in the morning. So I've never been a morning workout person because my brain is still sleeping. I just can't focus. So usually I get up about 5:15. I get dressed, and my commute over to the city is about an hour and 45 minutes. I use commercial public transportation. So I knock out a few tasks. If I didn't have a task, I'd read. But I process leave requests, answer email traffic, update our presence in Microsoft Teams. So I'm building a couple of quasi databases in there so that it's easier for us to focus on more important matters as opposed to the mundane requirements of the job. And once I get into the office, I'll converse with some of my coworkers or some of my team, ask them about how they're doing, how they feel this morning. I say good morning to everyone that I run into. So that's a routine that I have. So I make sure I speak to everyone, consume a cup of coffee and have a conversation. And then I'll look at my calendar, see what's on the agenda for the day. And then I'll start to try and prioritize the high value items first. And that's usually every day.
That's good. And then how do you develop yourself? I know you said you read. Do you listen to podcasts? Do you study anything, or what exactly are you reading or listening to?
So I read a lot about history, more specifically the experience of people of color in the United States, because that's something that we're not necessarily taught, and how they were instrumental in the development of the United States into a global economic power. I read military history as well. So I thought it was very interesting to understand how the Western way of war developed from Europe, with a lot of that coming from, his name will come to me, but just over time, how we, especially in the United States, have a specific way of war as compared to, let's say, Russia. We're more of a maneuver force as opposed to indirect fires and long range fires like Russia. Russia uses their long range and indirect fires in order to, they use their infantry in order to get their long range fires closer to obliterate their enemies. So whereas we use our long range fires to enable our infantry to get closer, and that's where this idea of close combat comes into play. So that concept is called forbearance, and it goes back to the Civil War, where you want to see the whites of the eyes of your enemies before you kill them, essentially. But yeah, I spent a lot of time better understanding what people have gone through in this nation, because for example, my trauma or whatever you want to call it was specific to me. However, if someone experienced a very bad relationship, let's say they were married and it was a traumatic experience for them and they had children, it's very likely that whomever that individual, whether it was the wife or the husband, would pass on that that trauma to their kids in some form or fashion.
Mm.
And potentially those kids would normalize that, and when they get into a relationship as an adult, they would pass that on. So the same thing
Mm.
happened with people of color, is that however much psychological trauma that they experienced over those hundreds of years, and then they were suddenly let free, it was never addressed. So then subconsciously, it was passed through the generations. So not only are we suffering from
Mm.
our own individual trauma, but also from that which has come down. So for example, there's a saying, there used to be a saying, and maybe still is, that if you want to hide something from Black people, you put it in the book. And I always wondered why that was. Why would someone say that? And so if you go back and you understand the history, it was illegal for people who were enslaved to read, and they could be punished by, a beating or death.
Ah.
So that lingered then, and so you could question now, well, why don't this segment of people or this population read? And it's the trauma. So I guess the best way to tie that together is, kids have an innate fear of snakes. You say, even if they've never seen one, if they saw a snake, they would have an innate fear of it. That's because over the course of human development across time, we have come to understand, and has been ingrained in this, probably genetically, that snake can cause me harm.
Mhm.
But if I see a gun, oh, I'll pick that up and play with it, even though the gun can kill you too. But the gun hasn't been around as long as a snake. So
Hmm.
there's something that develops in our psyche, that's passed down genetically, that tells us there are certain harms out there that we need to stay away from. Same thing with trauma. If you experience trauma and you need to sort to normalize it, it's passed down as well. So I read a lot about that to better understand contemporary issues. Um, you know,
That's deep. That's really
yeah.
deep. You're hitting some like core topics here. Um, hmm. What's a common myth about your job or field of expertise that you think there might need clarification on?
So young people are the ones who flock to the military, and our society is not necessarily violent, which is a good thing. But because it's not, we're not constantly in a physical war, or a hot war, as it were, and we don't have borders that connect with hostile countries. We don't really understand what we get ourselves into. And I think the first rude awakening I had was at AIT as a medic, and one of the drill sergeants said, you're a bunch of killers. And he said that a couple of times, and it kind of took me by surprise. Like, we're medics, so no, you're killers. So one myth is that we have different jobs, and some people are not necessarily involved if we were in a war with that aspect of the military. But the honest answer is that we're all military people are essentially um, taught or trained to, not necessarily to the great extent like the infantry or whatnot, but that's essentially what we do. The
Mhm.
whole point of war is to convince the enemy that they shouldn't fight for whatever cause that their country has them going. And the way you do that is convince them with violence.
Mm, yep.
And so then when we get into these combat zones, or into these conflicts, then that's when the reality sets in. And then you have someone who's 18 years old. It's like, whoa, I'm really signed up for this. I mean, this is really what I'm doing. So I think that's a big myth, that especially now that we are moving more from counterinsurgency tactics into large scale combat operations against peers or near peers who
Mhm.
either have the same capabilities as we do, or in some ways they outpace us in some capabilities. So the potential for casualties is extremely higher, especially against someone, a country like, for example, Russia, who has tactical
Mhm.
nuclear weapons, and they outrange us with their long range fires, or the Chinese with their huge military. So it's not the glory of how some people put it out there, like, you go to war and you get combat patch. Yeah, but there's a potential that you die too.
Yep.
And ours is a profession that, when we're actually engaged in it, there's a greater probability of becoming a casualty, or dying, as opposed to being a doctor.
Mm.
and working in a hospital. So I think that's a big myth. And one other is war is political by its very nature. It's all political. And we don't tend to understand that until you're more senior in rank and you actually go to these, for example, the Commander General Staff College, and they teach you that the reason why you go to war is all political. So
Mm.
for our president, he creates what's called the national security strategy with his staff, his cabinet, and from that, that's translated into the national defense strategy by the Secretary of Defense. And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and his staff, they create the national military strategy. So those geographical combatant commanders, the United States has the continent split up into different regions of command. They take the political objectives of the president and they transform them into military objectives to achieve those political outcomes, those positive political outcomes, and they create operational plans and such. So the focus is, what is the political objective we're trying to achieve using military means?
Gotcha.
So it's all strategy, but it's all based off of politics. Why? Because only politicians can declare war.
Oh, very good. How has coronavirus and everything affected your job and kind of like what you've done the past like couple of years? Any impacts or not
It's
really?
tremendous. So we were instrumental in testing and vaccinating, I think, over 17,000 Illinois citizens, military augmentation efforts with civilian counterparts. The mask wearing, the Army physical fitness test was put on. We couldn't do that anymore.
Wow.
Now we're getting into the arena of people facing discharge because the coronavirus was highly politicized, and unlike any other of the vaccines that we had to take, whether it's MMR, anthrax, OPV, anything we've taken before, it's never got to the point where my religion says that I shouldn't take this because of the way it was created, or it was rushed. It was rushed through the development process, and we don't know about the long-term effects. Yeah, but COVID can kill you. So I think that far outweighs the risks. But it's highly politicized, and people have generated a multitude of reasons why they feel they shouldn't take the vaccine, despite the number of people who've suffered and died from it. And it's totally astounding to me. But soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, they're going to face separation because they've been convinced, I think, in error, that the vaccine doesn't work. And
Okay, so in the military for you guys, because I'm still in, but I'm more on like transitioning out. They said if you don't get the vaccine, you're getting discharged.
Yes. So after the suspense is June 30th for the Army National for the National Guard.
Okay.
So after that, it's going to be an adverse separation that could potentially follow them for the rest of their lives. So
Wow.
it allows for legal discrimination because you don't have an honorable discharge.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, changing gears a little. How do you define success?
It's a journey. It's not a
Ooh.
destination. Success is every day. Part of success is failure too. So it's not someplace you get to and you say, "Hey, I'm successful." That's not how it works. It's an
I wish
everyday
that's
thing.
how it was.
Yeah, I'm done. I reached it at 35. I'm calling it quits. Yeah, it's a journey.
I love that. What do you think is important when you meet new people or how you communicate with others?
Remembering their names.
Ooh, I
And
like
saying
that.
them correctly. I really hate when people say my name wrong. I like to say, what's your name? Donnell. Oh, Donald. No, that's not what I said. So getting people's names right, eye contact, but most importantly, being yourself. There's something, people, I think, love when you're just genuine.
Yeah.
And you don't have a facade. that you're hiding behind, because at some point you get tired of holding that facade up, and then they see the real you, and then it's like, oh well, you should have just been that way from the very get-go.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with you. Or you might be obnoxious, and allow them to see that the first time around, and so they'll know who they're dealing with.
So earlier you talked about having your wife, your kids. How do you balance your personal life, your work life, your military, and all this other stuff? How do you balance both?
I don't think I do a very good job of that. It's very difficult to transition. Anyway, I feel it's very difficult to transition from my career to the household. And like if I take vacation, only towards the very end of the vacation do I feel like I'm totally integrated back into the family world. So their day-to-day experiences. I do feel detached in a lot of things, but I think that professionals in general may feel that way. Like for example, a physician who works 14, 15 hours a day or whatever, doing surgeries and whatnot. I think it's difficult for anyone who's outside of their home for extended period of time during the day to fully integrate and to have a good pulse on the home life and the kids. So that's always very difficult. But that's why I try to engage in activities that especially the kids are involved with, so that at least I have the effort made. Because I think that the presence is great, but putting forth the effort to engage in the same activities kind of shows more interest in it. And that's what they'll remember. I think they say you remember more about how somebody made you feel as opposed to what they did. So I hope that by being involved in that manner, they feel that I'm interested in what they're doing.
So this one so what do you try to teach your kids? What do you think is important for them to learn from you?
I think it's important for them to learn more of the truth, and not just my truth, but for example, we were talking about Easter, and my youngest daughter, she's all into it. She loves the egg hunts and everything. And this, I think this is where we get into a bit of a contention with schools and certain religious activities. So I just teach my kids, hey, Easter started out with a fertility goddess whose name is pronounced Easter, but it looks like it's Eostart or something like that. And because she was a fertility goddess, her I don't want to say mascots, but her images of fertility included the egg and rabbits. The egg meaning being a physical form of reproduction. I'm not sure how rabbits fit into that, but I know they don't lay eggs. But somehow that translated into a tradition, and no one questions the tradition. It's okay to partake in the activities. I don't prohibit them from doing that, but I want them to understand where it came from and why we're doing what we're doing, as opposed to blindly following tradition. So a lot of traditions that I grew up with, I started to question after I left home, and some of them I discontinued because I didn't agree with the origin and why we were continuing to do it. So, for example, my children, they don't, for the most part, they don't consume a lot of dairy milk. But now they'll eat cheese all day long. But I just try to tell them, human beings are the only animals on the face of the planet that continue to consume milk after, infancy or toddler years. And we're the only animal who will consume some other animal's milk. Speaking of this animal, it's a large bovine animal that produces milk for that little baby calf to grow into a big, strong cow. So then what is it trying to tell your cells to do? So in the Western diet, with the consumption of milk, meaning essentially the amounts, because, for example, cheese is concentrated milk, the amount that we consume compared to other countries where they have a more plant-based diet, or they don't consume dairy or whatnot, our cancer rates are astronomical compared to handfuls of cancer in these areas. So So there seems to be a link between not just animal protein intake, but also dairy. And dairy has a large lobbying group that continues to push that, hey, this is great for you. And despite consuming so much milk, older people still have osteoporosis for some reason. But
Mm.
so I try to tell them things that I didn't know or that I've learned, so that they start off life early having a better understanding of their environment, but also questioning. And that's how we learn. We question. If you ask enough questions, you'll eventually arrive at an answer.
I love that. How do you handle stress?
I work out. I work out, and I also I find ways to relax. I'll listen to music. I like listening to classical music, and I don't allow myself to overreact to it.
Okay.
I know it's there. I know that it's a normal reaction to have some sort of stress. Stress is normal. It's just unhealthy levels of stress that get to me. So I'll get up and walk away. I'll leave the stressful event, or I process it in my mind that it's not as big as what it seems to be. Therefore, it's not something that I should react negatively to it or adversely. And I remember that despite it's a stressful event, or whether it's a bad event, tomorrow I'm probably not even going to think about it.
Yeah.
So just keep that in the back of my head. That, as I say, every dark night there comes an even brighter day.
If you were to die tomorrow, would you be happy with your life and how you lived it? And what do you think makes a good life?
Yes. If I succumb to whatever tomorrow, I'm just fine. Because I was given a lot of opportunity that other people were not, from where I came from, that I have not taken for granted. I think that I've tried to go out and accomplish the things that I have set forth as goals. Not everything, of course, but I think the biggest thing is that I am appreciative of everything that has happened, and that there's been a lot that has come towards me that I probably I just never saw it coming. So I never anticipated a lot of this stuff. I never anticipated the opportunity to go to school, although I wanted to, because I didn't know how to get there. I didn't anticipate being an officer because I didn't understand the process to get there, and I didn't understand. I applied for a lot of AGR jobs and never got them, and then it just came. So good things come, but I didn't anticipate it. Thus, I wasn't necessarily let down if it didn't happen. But yeah, so go back to success. A part of it is people helping, because there's nothing that we do by ourselves, and there's been a tremendous number of people who have been instrumental in assisting me in getting to wherever I've gone, and without them, I wouldn't have been able to realize a lot of the things that have occurred in my life. So yeah, I'll be just fine. And that second part of your question,
what do you think makes a good life?
honestly, I think a good life is the greatest among us is the greatest servant to them all. I think so. Helping other people, serving other people, I think that makes a great life, because it's not a selfish. It's a selfless life. It's not a selfish life. And at the beginning and ending of every day, the only people we have is each other. So if we live up to the meaning behind Homo sapien, meaning wise man, the biggest obstacle we have is to figure out how to be better towards each other.
Oh, so good. So good. How do you want people to remember you? So if you did end up dying soon or tomorrow, what would you want people saying at your funeral, or how would you want them to remember you by?
I would say similar to what you shared at the very beginning. um, that I wasn't out for myself.
Yeah.
I would want them to remember when I was open. I shared, one of my icons was the late great Tupac, and the reason why is that he was not afraid to tell people about himself, and whether it was the highs or the lows. When sharing his mother was a crackhead, and all, he wasn't afraid to do that. So I would want people to remember that I wasn't afraid.
Oh, I love that. What are you most thankful and grateful for in your life?
My family. And I mean the extent of the family. So when I was coming up, I thought it was just my mom, my siblings, my aunts, my grandfather, but to come to find out that we have a tremendously large family, and then the extended family, they've been wonderful. Just whatever happens, family is still gonna be your family. So I think they're the biggest thing in my life. But then I also have family who's not family. So yeah, family is the biggest thing to me.
I love that. And then what's next for you? Do you have a current goal that you're working on, or where do you see yourself going?
So I have a short-term goal, I guess. I want to be the brigade OIC, so I want to make lieutenant colonel, and then at that point, I'm kind of thinking about retiring and going into the private sector. Probably back into teaching. I love teaching. I love interacting with people. If I'm ever in a situation where I can't interact with people, I kind of like it's totally off.
Yep.
So I was never good at working in a laboratory because there was never anybody else around. So I have to be around people, but then I have to have time that I can unwind to myself because I'm more of a introvert. So I have to have that unwind time and to not have to worry about interacting with people, to recharge. Longer term, I want all the kids to be able to go and do whether they want to go to school, go to trade school, to follow whatever it is that they're interested in doing. Which if I just retire at 20 or 21 years, then my oldest will be a senior in high school. So they'll still be relatively young.
If your kids decided they wanted to go join the military, would you support that?
Yeah. Okay. I would hope for them to go to school first.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think that if you're going to make a career out of it, it's better if you go the officer route. But it can't be done without NCOs. It's just I don't believe it's fair that you have NCOs who are educated. They have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, but they don't get compensated in the same way.
Yeah. So
they can do 20, 25 years or whatnot, and then the pension is not necessarily equitable. So then you're definitely required to go out and get another career, and you're already maybe if you start at 18, you're 38, 40 years old, and then you go out and you start another career, which is great. It's not bad. You're still young. But if you're an officer and you're 06, full bird colonel, and you retire and you're at, let's say, 25 years or so, the pensions are just significantly different. Mm-hmm. And they can go out and get something that they just enjoy doing. Hey, I can still maintain my current standard of living if I get a job that's making $60,000.
Yep.
Because I had the immediate pension. So I would encourage them to go to school first, but I know school is not for everybody. But if they did want to go, then by all means, it's a good experience. I just want them to be conscious of what they're getting into in the realest terms, because it's not necessarily all fun and games. It's a lot of reality that, again, we don't fully understand because we don't live in that type of, for example, on the border of some hostile country that lob shells over here or anything like that. So I want them to be fully prepared for the realities of that decision.
And then last question, what are your biggest nuggets or little takeaways or tips that anybody that sees or watches this could start doing in their own lives that they could be successful as well, or kind of be similar to you?
I think the biggest thing is one, you can get up every morning and you can decide to be, because you could decide your own happiness. And you can speak positivity into your day. So you can get up and speak that, and our words have power. We can shape a lot of things just by speaking. If you speak it into yourself, whether you get up in the mirror before you leave home and you say to yourself, I'm gonna have a great day today, and I'm going to do something for someone that changes their life or makes them feel better or whatnot. And you do that every single day, then that's your routine. And if you don't do it, or even if you speak it to yourself, it makes you feel better, and because it's something that you do on a regular basis. So that's number one. Number two, I think a part of success is learning to, again, love the person you are, fully, unconditionally, and then you can go out and you can love somebody else. Because you can love your kids unconditionally. That's obvious. A lot of people don't. But you can love your kids unconditionally. That's no problem. But say your significant other, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, you're not going to be very successful in that endeavor until you figure out how to love yourself and to accept yourself, that your flaws and everything included. You do that and you respect yourself, and not necessarily look for other people to respect you. I think you'll have an even better life, because you're not looking for validation from anybody else. You can go somewhere by yourself and you can have just as good as time as if you were with a crowd of your best friends. So it just makes you that much more of a better addition to somebody else's life. You should compliment somebody as opposed to, well, I need you to make me feel better. No, nobody makes you feel better. You make yourself feel better.
Yes, that's huge.
And I think lastly, fear is normal. The only people who don't have any fear are dead people. So fear is just a natural part of life, but so don't allow that fear to keep you from following or going after something that you really want. Otherwise, you'll look back and you'll look and regret. I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. Don't ever let that fear override your ability to act. I think that's the true definition of courage. Acknowledging the fear and then just moving beyond it. If we could do that in life, whether it's you're going for a position at your place of employment, you want to pursue this education, whatever, just go do it, and then take a step back and appreciate the efforts that you put forth into going after it.
This is so good. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy. I know you have your kids and you work. So I really, really appreciate your time in doing this. And then I'll be speaking to you later and then we'll be posting it. So I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate, again, the opportunity and the thought that you had to put into this. I know it was spur of the moment, but it was very professional. I appreciate you sending me the questions. I looked them over, but I didn't want to memorize them or anything like that, because I feel that if you could just speak right off the top of your head and speak from your heart, then you're not making it up as you go.
Right.
And it's more genuine. So again, I really appreciate it. You've always been a very positive person from my observations. You've always brought a high level of energy into everything that you've done. I really enjoyed the opportunity to have you as the XO. I'm
wearing my shirt. This was by accident. I literally just threw this on today.
Yeah. You constitute a group of people who made the experience so much better, and you definitely made the command a lot easier. And so again, I'm always appreciative of you in that space of time, but also appreciative that you thought of me highly enough to include in your segment.
Absolutely. Here. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Likewise. You take care.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.